Warning, the following content may contain elements that are not suitable for some audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, kiddies. This is yours duly, John Kassir, the voice of the Crypt Keeper. And you're listening to Slasher Radio.
Whoa, hold up. Wait a minute. It's your boy Bones here, guys. Hang on. We're doing something a little different right now. This is a re-release.
Wait, what?
Yes, a re-release from an old episode of Slasher Radio. And this is our interview with Doug Bradley. The topic had come up of the Michael Myers vs. Pinhead movie that unfortunately never seen the light of day during an episode of Versus. So if you're not familiar with Versus, you're f***ing up and you're missing out. That is part of the Slasher Radio Patreon. That's patreon.com/Slasher Radio. That is a show that is on Rob's Lord Humphrey Audio something, Rob's network. And that is exclusive to the Slasher Radio Patreon. So during this episode of Versus, we threw down Wes Craven versus John Carpenter, and the Michael Myers versus Pinhead topic came up. And I was like, Doug Bradley talked about that when we had him on a while ago. So I figured, you know what? Let me go back and listen to it, familiarize myself with it. And I noticed some audio problems that were going on that I just now became aware of. So I say, you know what? Let me chop it and cut it and give you guys the guts and what you really cared about, the interview with Doug Bradley. Everything else that was on that episode is pretty irrelevant for what the show is today. So I said, fuck it. We're just going to keep it short and sweet, remaster it with better audio and throw it back out there for you guys to enjoy. Anyone who maybe hasn't heard it before, you can listen to it for the first time, and everyone else who has, maybe enjoy it again. It's been a while, and who doesn't like hearing Doug Bradley?
Get a job, you bum!
You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to stop wasting your time. Enjoy the interview, guys, but don't forget to go to patreon.com/Slasher Radio so you don't miss anything. Support indie horror, damn it. Enjoy. I'm still having trouble mustering up the words to introduce our guest, Mr. Doug Bradley himself, the legend. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm very well. How are you?
We're doing great. You're doing great.
Good.
April, I know you had wanted to kind of jump things off.
Right, yeah. I was looking at your website and noticed, your book, and I was kind of reading up on it. And you had, within the book, you include interviews with, Robert Englund and Gunnar Hansen, just to name a few. And I read that you actually conducted these interviews yourself. Is that correct?
Yeah, this thing somehow has stayed in print now for 21 years.
Wow.
I think I'm right saying, I forget myself now, but I think it was 1997 when it first came out. And yes, when I knew I was going to be including their work, I approached Gunnar and Kane and Robert, both of whom I already knew. I'd made a movie with Robert, and I knew both Gunnar and Kane pretty well by that time from the convention circuit and doing haunted house appearances and so forth. So, yeah, I did those interviews with them.
And what was it like for you? Normally, even now, you're usually on the other side of the interview. What was it like more so doing the other side of that?
Well, it was kind of fun, given that I had no idea what I was doing. I'd never done that before, and I was recording them as you're doing it now. It's pretty primitive. I know when I came to transcribe them, they were very, very quiet. And I had to do a lot of, rewinding and playing in order to catch exactly what they were saying, but between the recording and my memory of what they had said at the time. But I knew particularly where I was going with the interview, so it was because what the focus of my book is masking and transformational roles. So that in the book, I start out with a kind of brief history, cultural history, if you like, of masking. Very brief because it's such a huge topic. And then I went to the origins of drama as we understand it in ancient Greek, when all the actors were masked. It would have been unthinkable for them to put an actor on stage unmasked.
Mm-hmm.
And then I looked at other masked theatre traditions as well, specifically the No theatre in Japan, and then I came into movies and horror movies, which is really the place where those transformational roles and the place of the masked actor has found its home in the 20th century. So I started back with Lon Chaney Sr. And what I specifically wanted to look at was the actor's relationship to their masks, which varies greatly. I mean, as we know, for Lon Chaney Sr., it was like a calling, and he was exceptional in that he designed and made and wore all his own makeups. And then moved on through the process of horror movies. So I knew I was going to come up to the present day, and before I got into talking about me coming to Pinhead and that experience for me from a personal point of view, that I wanted to look at their work and their relationship to their makeup. So the interviews had fairly narrow parameters in that regard.
And you had mentioned going back to horror, and I understand that it's, kind of more relevant to where you were going, but just in general, or have you always been a fan of the horror genre? Because strangely enough, even, you doing Pinhead with Hellraiser, and we've spoken to people who really aren't fans of it, and it's like mind-blowing to us as viewers. So has that always been something you enjoyed?
Absolutely, yes. I was a fan of horror films as a teenager, and I can go all the way back to as a kid. I was obsessed with ghosts, terrified of them, but couldn't get enough of them. I've always said my introduction to horror on a serious basis would be, I think, in the early 1970s, when I was in Liverpool in the northwest of England, and the local television company was Granada Television. And right after news at 10, which was the 30-minute evening news on ITV, which is the independent commercial station, Granada Television started showing all of Hammer's movies. So that was Monday night was 10:30 p.m. That was my date with horror. So that was really my serious inroad into horror. But I was a fan of the genre long before I knew that I was going to be an actor professionally, and I remain a fan of the genre.
Yeah, of course you've done numerous films, and I was going to go into the audiobooks section and talk a little bit about that. Your Spine Chillers,
Right.
Volume 13 was the last one. I think you featured Jeffrey Combs on that, and it was released in 2014, I believe. Do you have any plans to release any more things like that in the future?
Yes. Well, that kind of 13 volume, that's kind of a set, and Jeffrey did more. What he's reading on volume 13 is the final story of the. I mean, this was my great brainwave. let's get Jeffrey Combs to read the Reanimator stories, right? Because no one would ever think of doing that. So I lose track myself now of the maths of it, but are there 5 stories in the Reanimate the Herbert West series, I think? I think it's 5 anyway. So on the last 5, if I'm correct, then the last 5 volumes, he's reading one of those stories. But he also read Poe's The Cask of Amontillado, and which was funny. Recently, a guy came up to me at a convention, and he wanted to talk about spine chillers, which is always rewarding for me. It's always nice when someone wants to talk about the spine chillers. And he said, I just wanted to say your reading of The Cask of Amontillado, I think, is the best I've ever heard. And I said, oh, okay. Well, it's very kind of you, but actually, that wasn't me. Kind of, no, your spine chiller series, your reading of Cask of Amontillado. I said, yeah, I know what you're talking about, but it wasn't me. Go and find Jeffrey Combs and tell him how good he was, which he undoubtedly was. And he also read an Ambrose Bierce story, A Fruitless Assignment. And Bierce was new to me. I will freely admit I was absolutely ignorant of his existence. I guess Americans know him maybe more than we would in the UK. I think particularly because of those Civil War story, the bridge, an occurrence that is it Owl Creek Bridge? God, my memory. This is it. Decrepitude has overtaken me. Is Owl Creek Bridge right? That doesn't sound quite right. Anyway. That I think is a very, very well-known story over here. But when I started garnering material for the Spine Chillers series, I was given a book which is a collection of stories by H.P. Lovecraft's favorite authors, and specifically his favorite stories by them, and there were 3 stories by Ambrose Bierce in them, and I was knocked over by them, and immediately scurried off and went off to find more by him, and I have become such a huge fan of his. He's very funny, structures his stories amazingly for his time. You know, he very much did that factored narrative of starting somewhere in the middle of the story and then going out to the end of the story and wrapping around to come to the end. And he has a wonderfully cynical voice as well, which I like. So yes, became a huge fan of his, and he can boast the shortest story in the Spine Chillers collection, which is a deliciously nasty story called Tom Mortenson's Funeral, which I think is just barely over 3 minutes long, but it's a wonderful story, which is Tom Mortenson's funeral, and he has one of those viewing coffin, not an open casket, but a viewing casket with a glass panel in it where you could see the deceased's face.
Right.
And he wonderfully describes the funeral, and then at the end, as Norma's come up to say goodbye to him, one of them, I can't remember whether it's his wife or his mother, gets to the casket and shrieks and goes crazy and knocks the casket off the trestles, and it falls to the floor, and the glass viewing panel shatters, and out of the wreckage of the casket steps Tom Mortenson's cat, which had accidentally got shot in the coffin with Tom, had been quietly devouring Tom's face, which
Oh my goodness.
and the wreckage of Tom's face was what greeted the mourner as they went to pay their last respects to Tom. And he describes at the end with the blood smeared around the cat's jowls as the cat calmly wanders away, wondering what all the commotion is about. He described the novel as a short story padded. Yes. So that's Jeffrey's contribution, and Robert Englund also contributed to the series. He recorded The Sleeper, Edgar Allan Poe's poem, and The Terrible Old Man by H.P. Lovecraft, and An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge by Ambrose Bierce. And I'm now very confident that it is Owl Creek Bridge. So that's the Spine Chiller series. We will do more. In fact, I've completed what we're doing is author collections. Starting with Edgar, because there were stories that simply didn't get recorded for the 13 volumes. It's not complete by any means. Not all of Poe's stories fall under the Spine Chillers umbrella, but there were stories that probably ought to have been recorded that simply didn't get recorded because of time. I mean, I think we had at least one Poe story and a poem on every volume, but some got left by the way. So I've added those that I thought deserved to be recorded, and I think it's The Oblong Box, Murders in the Rue Morgue, Never Bet the Devil Your Head, and I think The Imp of the Perverse, and I can't honestly remember now whether that's on the original 13 volumes or not. Those, and then I recorded The Bells as well. Questionable whether that belongs in a spine chilling collection, but it's just such a tremendous poem, and the last verse of it, I guess, does belong there. So that's kind of ready to go, and it won't. I think we won't be putting those on CD at least not for the moment. But they'll be available for download, either in a full collection, and I think I'm going to record a new introduction for it, and that will be available soon. And then the plan is to do the same thing for Lovecraft, and then the same thing for Ambrose Bierce, because there are still stories. There's a lot of Lovecraft that didn't get recorded, and there's still Ambrose Bierce stories that didn't get recorded. And there are other stories as well. There may be an English collection to put together. I mean, there were stories by Dickens and Arthur Conan Doyle and other people too. So that may be another volume. And I always had it in my mind to do a Lady Chillers, a Spine Chillers collection, and there are some really fine stories by women writers. So maybe that one too. So we'll see. It's easy to talk about these things, but it all takes time.
Right, yeah. That's kind of what I was going to get into. Do you prefer audiobooks versus film? Because I know it's probably a lot easier, I would think, to to come up with an audiobook than to go through the whole filming process.
Well, it's all a very, very different thing. Do I prefer recording audiobooks to doing movies? No. That would be number one, I think. Or possibly still, actually, theatre would be number one. but you know, each is its own different challenge, and each brings their own particular rewards and frustrations and annoyances. But I've set up to be able to record at home now, so I can generate a bit of this stuff in terms of audiobooks, a bit more myself. And in fact, I've completed recording Barbie Wilde's serial killer novel, The Venus Complex.
Oh, wow.
Barbie Wilde, of course. If anybody listening doesn't know, shame on you. Played the female Cenobite in Hellbound, the second Hellraiser movie. And she wrote the serial killer novel, which I thought was really rather good, and suggested to her I do the audiobook for it. It's recorded, so it's the frustrations I mentioned. It's in the final stages of getting the technical details right, which is down to me, you know. And as an audio engineer, I'm a pretty good actor. You know what I mean? So this is it's kind of it's a learning curve for me, but that's very nearly done. It'll be, again, it won't be on CD, but it'll be available as a download at Audible, iTunes, and Amazon.
So it's great to hear that you do all of this yourself, because I know it can be a lot of work to, put these things together and release them yourself. So will this be all on your website and everything as well?
Yeah, I would hope so. Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's much easier when somebody else is doing all the work. You know, if someone else is doing the recording and the editing and the mastering and all the rest of it, you know, and all I have to do is roll up in the studio and flap my lips for a few hours. It's all a great deal easier on that basis. But yeah, it's exciting to do this and follow the process all the way through.
Yeah, I can definitely attest that whole audio editing is not fun. Not fun at all. No, it just takes time. It's just long-winded and there's no shortcuts to be had. Well, there are, but it wouldn't sound good. It would sound very bad.
But what I mean by that is I'm aware that I can't let myself do it for any great length of time, because I get sloppy, because I get bored with it. And, if I listen to something and think, I really should do that. Oh God, but how long is that going to take? Oh, never mind. I can just do that instead. I try to avoid falling into that pitfall.
I'm guilty of that myself. I think about, I could take this out, but oh my God, what a pain in the butt that'll be. Just leave it in there.
Yeah.
But April had mentioned obviously your film work and how you prefer it. Hellraiser, one of the most iconic, if not the most iconic film franchise in the genre of horror, and you were able to work with Clive Barker on that. And how was it to work alongside of him? And he's such an insanely creative storyteller and director. So what was that experience like?
Well, it was fantastic, but it wasn't a new experience for me, of course, because Clive and I were at the same high school in Liverpool.
Oh,
and I first met him in rehearsals for the school play when I guess I was about 14 or 15. He would be a couple of years older than me. And he was already writing and producing and directing and hand drawing the posters for his own plays when he was at school. And I got drawn into that orbit. So I had experience of working with him where are we? I get very bad at doing maths these days because there's too many decades to work back through. So this would be very late 60s, I think, when I was doing the school play with him and then doing stuff with him at school. And then after school and university, there was a group of us who had kind of constellated around Clive, and we started doing experimental theatre in Liverpool. The Everyman Theatre in Liverpool used to let us have access to the theatre when it was dark. So we put stuff on there. And Pete Atkins became part of the process then. Pete Atkins also from Liverpool, the Scouse Mafia, and of course Pete, as a member of the Scouse Mafia, became very much part of the Hellraiser team, not directly on Hellraiser itself, but of course he wrote the screenplays for Hellbound, Hell on Earth, and Bloodline. And then by degrees, we had moved down to London and formed the dog company. And between around, I think, like 1978 through 1982, again, original plays by Clive, which are published now and have been independently performed themselves. So titles may now be familiar to people. The History of the Devil, which was my particular favorite. I played the devil in that. Frankenstein in Love, Paradise Street, which is kind of a fantasy play set in Liverpool. And the dog company had kind of come to an end in 1982, and then 1986 we were doing Hellraiser. So I had worked with Clive as a director because he directed nearly all the plays that we did during that decade of theatre work in Liverpool and London. But I'd also been very much front and center of his creative world, not just in terms of theatre, but also the couple of movies we had done together, but also his writing and his artwork as well. So I had seen all that develop and being a part of that process through that time. So it was more a kind of culmination of that working relationship to get to Hellraiser rather than me working with him for the first time. It helped enormously, of course, because I was very familiar with that world, and reading first the Hellbound Heart and then the screenplay for Hellraiser, you know, I could kind of, I knew where Clive was. I knew where this belonged in his creative universe, I guess.
So I had no idea you knew him as long as you did. Did he ever have this idea when you guys were younger about this story of Hellraiser, or it was just kind of something he worked on and figured out later on?
That's a good question. Who knows? I don't know, to be honest. I don't remember any discussion about the ideas in Hellraiser prior to him writing the Hellbound Heart and then adapting that as Hellraiser. But nothing ever gets wasted in Clive's imagination. He's a great recycler. Stuff comes around and gets reused and resurfaces, all the time. So I've no doubt that there would be bits and pieces of stuff from earlier work that fed into Hellraiser.
Yeah, if you would take us down memory lane and kind of get into how you landed the role and how you felt, once you learned that you were chosen for the role.
He asked me.
Oh, wow.
It's that simple. He asked me, and I said yes.
It makes sense, hearing this this story now, it makes a lot of sense. And did you or even maybe even Clive? Obviously, he would feel it's a success, and you hopped on the project, so you probably thought so as well. But did you ever envision it growing into what it has?
Oh God. No. I mean, this would be crazy talk. Absolutely crazy talk. I think partly, I've said this before, but we were not being hugely successful in the theatre work. I think, particularly when we came down to London, I think we had a sort of collective belief that what we were doing was so good, and I think it was. But what we were doing was so good that all we would have to do would be to lay our work out in front of people, and we would be hailed as geniuses, and we'd be given the keys to the mansion on the hill, and we'd live in the sunlit uplands ever after. And it didn't quite work out like that. We were doing dog company performances to the proverbial, two men and a budgerigar, and although we were successful and people were starting to pay attention to us, we went up to the Edinburgh Festival a couple of times, and we were very successful up there. Ollie Parker had joined the dog company by that time. Ollie then played the mattress delivery guy in Hellraiser, and reprised his role in Hellbound, and played Peliquin in Nightbreed. And of course, now he's a director in his own right. He's directed St. Trinian's and The Picture of Dorian Gray with Colin Firth, and I had a small part in An Ideal Husband with Rupert Everett, Ollie directed. So that story grew out of the dog company in London as well. But I digress. To specifically answer your question, I suppose I thought that Hellraiser would suffer a similar fate. Maybe I was just punch drunk on people ignoring what we were doing. I don't think I ever thought about it, to be honest. I don't think you do. I certainly don't think you should. It was just a case of, get your head down and get the work done. I think a quick way to failure is to be convinced that this is the beginning of a franchise, or that this is something that's going to make an indelible mark in the history of cinema, which I don't think it would be an exaggeration now to say it has done. No. No way in the world I ever saw it coming. And if anyone had come to me on a damp Tuesday morning at Cricklewood Production Village, at 5:00 in the morning when I was sitting in the makeup chair, on this movie that I was being paid union minimum rates to make. I mean, if I'd been paid any less, I think I would have been classed as an extra. Although I was making a great deal more money than I had ever made out of acting before. I had come out of doing provincial repertory theatre in England to Hellraiser, where I've been earning about 100 quid a week, and I was earning a great deal more money in Hellraiser than before. But nevertheless, bottom of the rung on the pay scale, playing this character who had no name, was buried in latex, and is going to be on screen for, I think, about 8 minutes or something. I don't know. Fans have told me the precise length of time I'm on the screen. but I don't think it's anything more than about 10 minutes. So if you had suggested to me then that, where are we now, 32 years later, I would be sitting here talking to you about this role. I wouldn't have had any understanding of what you were talking about. I would have thought you were slightly crazy. I knew we were doing something good, and I knew we were doing something interesting. And I had faith enough in Clive. There was a huge gamble that New World took to put Clive behind the camera. He'd never directed a movie previously. It was a huge gamble for them to invest in him, not only as the writer, but also as the director. But I knew enough about Clive as a director, both visually and from an acting point of view, to know that he would make something remarkable visually out of this. But so I thought, well, maybe we'll make a splash for a few weeks, and then, then it'll get forgotten and the world will move on to the next new thing. No, I had absolutely no notion in my head that it would make the impact that it has done. It seems to me the movie is more popular now than it's ever been, which is even more remarkable to me. Its popularity seems to be growing.
I definitely agree with you on that, and that's something I'm going to actually be mentioning later on. But I agree with you, and it's funny you brought that up. Your character in the original film did not have a lot of film time, and it was just kind of... I've always found it so impressive that it caught on the way it did in such an enormous way, with having such little, visual impact on the original film, and it was still able to capture the way it did, and I've always been impressed by that.
Well, I'll tell you who it took by surprise, and that's Clive. To the extent that I think genuinely he was a bit annoyed by it, because his focus was not on Pinhead and the Cenobites. His focus was very much on Julia, Claire Higgins' role. Brilliant performance, magnificent performance by Claire. But that's where his focus was. He was creating the first great female monster in horror films. And he said to me that when they were doing test screenings of the movie, I think particularly in this country before its release, when the cards were coming back, people kept talking about the Cenobites. Not just Pinhead, not called Pinhead then, but it was the Cenobites that people kept referencing. Now, it seems to me crazy that you wouldn't see this coming, because you create these extraordinary characters who are visually so arresting and so unlike, I think, in a lot of ways, anything that has preceded them. And you put them up on the big screen. How is it possible that you don't expect horror fans to go, yeah, we liked the film. Julia, yeah, she was fine, she was good, yeah, great performance, great actress. But oh my God, the Cenobite. It seems fairly obvious, but that was what was happening, and I think while the success of the film obviously delighted him, I think there was a little bit of annoyance that these Cenobites were creeping up and stealing the limelight.
He's got such this personality to him, this deep, dark intensity to him, and I would think that becoming him as a character would take a lot of preparation, and it comes through in the movie, because as soon as he's on screen, he just commands your attention. And but was there anything special you did before filming to kind of channel this sinister personality within Pinhead?
Not Really, I mean, I couldn't really see what I could do, if you see what I mean. You know, I had Clive first and foremost as the person who had, you know, literally dreamt this character up. So I talked to him a lot about it, and as I said earlier, there were elements of what Pinhead was about, and there were elements of the way Pinhead was speaking, and there were elements of the things that Pinhead was saying that were already familiar to me, kind of distillations or echoes of things that had gone before in work that we'd done. So I could get a hold of that. I talked to Clive. He gave me insights into the character. He told me that I should look upon Pinhead as a combination of a butcher and a monk.
Wow.
And I remember him saying to me, you're a surgeon in a hospital, but this is a hospital that has no wards, only operating theaters. And you are the person who wields the knife and who carries out all the operations personally. But you're also the administrator. You're responsible for making sure everything runs on time. So, you know, I mean, these are not practical assists to an actor, but they're invaluable imaginative insights. So it's a bit like steeping the tea bag in the water, you know. Mm-hmm. You drop it in and you wait to see what flavors develop. I guess he gave me a magazine to look at called PSIQ, which stood for Piercing Fans International Quarterly. Body modification was not as familiar and common on Main Street and the high streets as it is now. And this was a magazine devoted to people who were going in for body modification in a pretty extreme way. And I had associations in my own mind from documentaries of religious festivals and tribal practices that I'd seen that included both body modification and also ideas of flagellation and of cutting yourself and in the cause of devotion to a god or a spirit or whatever it may be. So all of that was kind of going around in my head. And I'd read The Hellbound Heart. I had the screenplay, and the screenplay is where you go all the time. You read the screenplay again and again and again and again and again. And again, you know, just back to the steeping the tea bag in the water. All the normal questions that an actor might ask himself were posed to me. You know, what car does he drive? What does he eat for breakfast? Does he watch sports? And if he does he favor soccer over cricket? Would be the question I'd be asking myself then, you know, as opposed to football over baseball or whatever. None of that applied. Because, and as far as I was aware, there was nowhere I could go to watch Cenobites at work, you know. At least I hope not. So you can't do any of that. None of that is applicable. It's an act of imagination. That's it. Mm-hmm. But I've said many times that the point at which I, for the first time, had the costume and makeup on, particularly the makeup, and I sat in front of the mirror. We did a screen test of the makeup, and that was about a 6-hour application that first time with everybody feeling their way through it. I was already a bit spaced out from that, and I sat in front of the mirror on my own for maybe 15 minutes. And quite unashamedly, I say that I probably I'm doing air commas found 95% of where I was going to go playing the character, just sitting, staring at myself in the mirror. And as I've said many times, you know, you put that makeup on me, and that costume, Jane Wildgoose's magnificent costume, which she kind of designed with Clive, but then just made so brilliantly. The image looks so incredible. You put those words in my mouth, and then you put Chris Young's music behind me. You know, how can I go wrong?
Yeah.
It's kind of, you know, it's all set up for me. So but the real answer is I have no idea. You stand on your marks and somebody says action and you open your mouth and hope for the best.
Yeah, I saw on social media that you had gotten into your full Pinhead gear fairly recently. What was it like to get into all that all over again years later?
That was last year for the Pinhead experience, which we did at Mad Monster Party in Phoenix. Yeah, well, I mean, it's become a thing recently with photo ops at the conventions for actors to get into makeup and costume, and I'd seen, you know, quite a few people do it. Gunnar had done it, and Sid Haig has done it. Captain Spaulding and Bill Moseley had done it, and I'd watched this and I'd thought, I wonder. And of course, people had asked me about it, and my thing was always, I don't see how I can make this happen. I didn't feel that I could get into makeup and costume and just do a regular photo op. Because if I'm in makeup and costume, I can't be standing there going, "Hi, how are you? Lovely to meet you." You know, and putting my arm around somebody and smiling for the camera, "Thank you very much for coming," and going on to the next person. That doesn't work, and I couldn't see how I could make that work. So I kind of resigned myself to not really being able to do it. But then I thought, well, flip it. If Pinhead can't go into the fans' world, bring the fans into Pinhead's world. So what we ended up doing, myself and my partner Steph, who put the whole thing together, latterly with invaluable help from Steve Tolan FX here in Pittsburgh, and Jay Evans, I think his second name is. He'll forgive me if I've got that wrong. Who built the set for us in Phoenix, and Alison and her partner, who were down in Nashville, who made the new costume for me, because this was part of my trouble. There was no makeup, there was no costume, there was no nothing. I had an idea of what we were going to do, which was to create a 2-minute walkthrough, like a kind of like going through a room in a haunted house, and that the photograph would be incidental, would be like the photograph on the roller coaster ride. And so we put the whole thing together. It was a lot of work. It was very stressful. It cost me a lot of money, which I made back. That was fine. But it worked brilliantly. I mean, it really couldn't have gone any better, and we had such tremendous responses. But that would be the first time, I'm going to say, in 15 years.
Wow.
I think 14 or 15 years that I had the full makeup and costume on. And it was like getting back on the bike. It was remarkably easy. I was surprised because I thought it would be, I wasn't quite sure because this was a completely different atmosphere and experience to playing, to going on a film set to do it.
Almost like stage acting.
But it was kind of.
Yeah.
It was like doing. I said it was like doing a 2-minute one-man show over and 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 over again, or doing take 1, take 2, take 3, take working for Stanley Kubrick. I was surprised by how easy it felt to just, I just thought, oh, I remember this. This is how I did it. This is what I do. Yes, I always had fun doing this. I like this. This is good. So yeah, it was nice to be back there.
And you had mentioned earlier, and I'm kind of circling around a little bit to that. You had mentioned about the franchise being more popular, the thing as a whole being more popular now. And I feel as fans, we've gotten recent movie installments of the franchise, but there was always such a huge piece missing, and obviously that was you, and it almost made it borderline not enjoyable in my opinion. So you had mentioned it had been so long since you had put the whole costume on and the whole makeup and the whole gear and everything. 2005, the Hellworld edition of the franchise, for the Hellraiser franchise, was the last time you played Pinhead in the series. Why did that?
Well, that movie came out in 2005, but actually we wrapped it at the end of 2002.
Oh, wow.
It was a long, and don't ask me why it was such a gap before it was released, because I don't know. But so that, although it came out in 2005, it was already by that time 3 years old. So
wow.
2002 was the last time I played the character.
Oh, wow. I knew there was a delay. I didn't know it was that long. Wow. But why did you decide to not pursue the Pinhead character in the later films?
There was a variety of reasons. When Revelation came along, it was a strange kind of offer. It was quickly apparent that the reasons why the movie was being made was not because somebody wanted to reinvigorate or bring life back into the franchise. It was being made really for political reasons. The Dimension Films were going to lose the rights to the franchise if they didn't have this movie made in a hurry. To the extent that, I was approached about making the movie in July 2010, and they needed to have the movie in front of the camera by September the 3rd, I believe, beginning of September, which was already, barely 6 weeks away. So it was being made in a tearing hurry, and they were spending no money on it. And I didn't think the screenplay was any good. So for all these reasons, I turned that down. Judgment got slightly more complicated, and I didn't get as far as reading the screenplay. Before I stepped aside from Judgment. I saw Revelation eventually. I haven't seen Judgment. So having not read the screenplay and I'm not trying to avoid it, I just haven't got round to it. I will one fine day. So I can't make any comment on it. I've met Paul T. Taylor, who played Pinhead in Judgment. I've never met the guy who played him in Revelation. But I've met Paul, and I've always said good luck to him, and I've said to fans in Q&As, it's not you, it's not you, it's not you, and I've said, well, yeah, okay, it isn't me, but it's somebody else, and he's an actor who got a gig with a target on his back, and people shouldn't be down on him because he's not me. That's simply not fair to a fellow professional actor. I mean, you can think his performance is brilliant. You can think his performance is terrible, as you see fit. That's your choice. But don't attack him or criticize him just because he's not called Doug Bradley. That's wrong.
Yeah, you're 100% right. He didn't stand a chance almost to begin with, and it's funny. I didn't know the whole background of how that film was created, but watching it, I didn't really want to watch it, and I said, you know what, I'll give it a shot. And I always said, whenever someone asked me what I thought about it, I always said it felt thrown together. And now hearing you say all this, it kind of, it makes a little sense to where there wasn't the story and the passion as in the earlier Hellraiser films. And I always thought that's what made it stand out, among other things. But the story of it was so strong, and there was love and killing and all these things intertwined that you never really get in a horror film. And that's always what attracted me to the Hellraiser franchise.
Yeah, well, I mean, Clive had very much talked about the first Hellraiser. I think he described it as the first movie as Ibsen with monsters. He said it was, it's a family drama with something nasty in the attic.
I don't know if it was a rumor or not. Hopefully you could clear it up. There has always been talks of the Pinhead character and the Michael Myers character being a part of the Freddy vs. Jason film. Is there any truth to that, or were you ever approached for anything like that?
Yes and no. Not truth that Pinhead and Michael would become part of the Freddy vs. Jason universe. There's been a strong rumor going around that Pinhead was going to become part of that world. That obviously would be complicated because Freddy and Jason were owned New Line had the rights to those franchises, so there you go. They can do what they like with that. Obviously, Pinhead belongs to Dimension Films, Miramax, as was. So it would have required, cross-studio cooperation if that was ever going to happen. But Dimension and Miramax also had the rights to Halloween by the time Freddy vs. Jason came out, and it is absolutely true that they wanted a Hellraiser. Well, I think the shorthand for it was a Halloween movie, a Hellraiser Halloween crossover, Pinhead versus Michael, if you will, and it was I believe pretty serious. I certainly had a couple of conversations with Clive about it. Clive had said that he would write it, and John Carpenter said that he would direct it.
Oh my God!
And I was very excited by that combination.
I'm getting excited right now.
I was excited at the possibility of working with John because I was such a huge fan of his work. My understanding is now, this is only what I get to hear, but my understanding is that Mustafa Akkad, who was one of the Akkad brothers who originally produced Halloween, he was tragically killed in a terrorist attack in the Middle East several years ago. But as I was told it, he simply said that he didn't want the movie made. And I guess from whatever master contract was written when they were producing the first Halloween film, clearly he had enough right of veto in any future sequels that him saying, don't want this to happen, was enough to kill it stone dead. And I've never heard another word about it since.
Wow. And now hearing you saying that Clive was willing to write it. And that was always my thing with it, is how would it happen?
Well, I had a conversation with Clive, and we'd both seen Freddy versus Jason, and we agreed that what couldn't really happen would be that kind of mano a mano confrontation between Freddy and Jason. That works fine for those two characters, but it's not really Pinhead's MO,
Mm-hmm.
So what Clive was saying that he was interested in was, where do the landscapes intertwine? Where does Pinhead's world meet Michael Myers' world? And I think his feeling was that, particularly in that first movie, which I've always said works like a Dracula movie. If Michael is Dracula, you have Donald Pleasance as Loomis, as Van Helsing. And Loomis spends the first part of the film, running around screaming at anyone who listened to him. You don't know what you're dealing with. You don't know what you're dealing with. You don't know what you're dealing with. And this becomes like this repeated refrain in your head. I remember from seeing the film the first time. Okay, I don't know what I'm dealing with. I'm slightly scared. And there was this supernatural element to Michael in the first film, which got a bit lost later, I think. But so that in the context of the first film, when he got shot and he got up and carried on walking and, got stabbed in the neck with the knitting needles and then appeared on the sidewalk staring at up at the window, it kind of made sense. So I think I was prepared to get a hold of that side of Michael, that kind of supernatural side of Michael. Plus he's a psychosexual, sadistic killer. What's not with a dodgy relationship with his sister? What's not for Pinhead to get interested in?
Right.
I think was Clive's feeling. But more than I never saw a screenplay. More than that, I never knew.
See, now you just put a recipe on the table with Clive and John and you, and it's like Mr. Bradley, we got to talk to you today, and I was so happy, and you just broke my heart a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. But no,
yeah, it's a shame.
Thinking Clive would be involved with it was what intrigued me even more, because it's like he's such a creative writer. How is he going to get there? And I knew it would be good. I just didn't know how he would do it. And that would, thinking outside the box of that Myers character, it makes sense that he would do something like that.
Right.
But I have to ask you the $1 million question. If you were ever offered a legitimate Hellraiser film, would you come back to return as that character?
I've never said I'm done with it. I've never closed the door on it. So, right script, right circumstances, blah, blah, blah. Sure, I'd consider it. Absolutely. I didn't just say a flat no to the last two films. There were, it was decisions that I made, rightly or wrongly, for other people to decide. I made those decisions, but yeah, I've never closed the door on it. I've said, and I hasten to add that as far as I'm aware, there are no plans in this direction that I'm aware of. But if I was to be able to pick a bookend, as it were, to my experience of playing Pinhead, it would be to get a really good, solidly budgeted, really good screenplay, good adaptation of the Scarlet Gospel, and close it out that way. Don't get excited, Internet.
Damn it!
As far as I'm aware, it's not happening. So it's only my bucket list.
Yeah, it's just so interesting because Pinhead, as you developed him, he's just one of the scariest horror characters of all time, in my opinion. Every time I've ever seen him, he's truly scary, and he's left that mark on the horror genre. But I'd like to hear your influences as you were growing up. Did you look up to any fan actors as a fan or as an actor as an influence?
As actors, particularly, I would say the first two big influences on my life would be John Lennon and Bill Shankly, and these are both obviously very much relate to my growing up in Liverpool, because I guess I was eight, going on 9, I think, when Love Me Do hit the charts. Just as I was becoming aware of the existence of this thing called pop music, as we knew it then, not rock, it was pop music. Just as the Beatles and My City were about to become the epicenter of the whole thing, and John also attended Quarry Bank, the school that Clive and I were at when we met school plays. As I was describing earlier, though, a decade before us, of course. And I gravitated to John, I think, partly because he was the one my dad didn't like. He was the dangerous one. He was the one who opened his mouth and got himself into trouble. So I kind of liked that. And lots of other figures in the music world that made a big impact on me too. Obviously, lots and lots. Because I've always been a big music fan too. Bill Shankly was the manager of my football club when I was growing up in Liverpool. Liverpool Football Club, and he was a wonderful, 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 wonderful man, and he's always been a touchstone and an inspiration to me. Liverpool Football Club was a passion that came into my life in the early 1960s, and has never let me go. I'm as passionately committed a supporter now as I ever have been. In terms of actors, God, there are so many. In the horror genre, I've said many, many times in answer to this that Peter Cushing is my god in horror movies. I said that my introduction to horror was watching those Hammer movies on Granada TV on Monday evenings in the early 1970s. And it was Cushing that I got a hold of, but I was already familiar with, because he played Sherlock Holmes for the BBC in the 1960s. So he was kind of my first Sherlock Holmes. He's also one of my favorite Doctor Who's. Hammer did two movie adaptations of Doctor Who, with Cushing playing the Doctor. And I worship at his feet, really. And I've always said that you look at the ability that he had to produce that white hot, pure intensity that he had playing Van Helsing opposite Christopher Lee's Dracula. But then he could flip it around, and playing Baron Frankenstein in Hammer's Frankenstein series, he flips it around, and I've always said I think that series of Hammer movies, Cushing becomes the center of it. Quite unusually with Frankenstein, with Hammer, it's not the creature who becomes the focus of the series. It's Cushing's Baron, And as you go down through the series, particularly some of the later films, I like particularly Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell and Frankenstein Created Woman.
Mm-hmm.
Cushing's portrayal gets more and more amoral, and I think it's one of the great studies in evil ever put on film. James Mason was always an actor that I was just astonished by. Again, the breadth of what he was able to do. Robert Duvall later in the 70s, Duvall became a great favorite of mine. And he has that great ability to be good in shit. There's a number of actors who can do that. But there's so many. This could become a very long and tedious conversation, but I'll settle for them at the moment.
For sure. I mean, just hearing it's such a strange thing hearing somebody that we, because we have kind of the same outlook towards you and, like Robert Englund and people, from our genre, what we grew up with. And it's strange hearing somebody like you talk about all these people that you look up to. It always kind of freaks me out a little bit. Mr. Bradley, I have one last question for you, and I'm hoping you can settle a debate that we've had on this show for a while. Are you familiar with I'm sure you're familiar with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies and the Leprechaun franchise?
Texas Chainsaw Massacre, yes. Leprechaun, not really. I'm aware of it. I can't say that I'm familiar.
Oh, man.
But I'll help you if I can. What's the question?
Well, it kind of ties into the Myers versus Pinhead thing you touched on. If Leatherface and the Leprechaun were to have gotten into a fight, who do you think would come out victorious?
Are you fucking kidding me?
As ridiculous. This is a debate we've had going on for a while.
That's insane.
Believe it or not.
What the fuck is the Leprechaun doing? Okay, well, it's in boxing terms, it's no contest. Leatherface would literally have him for lunch, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Damn.
Yes, he would.
Damn, you broke my heart again, sir.
Why, who thinks the Leprechaun? Who's in the Leprechaun's corner?
Not to say any names, but I do think that Leprechaun.
It's me versus him. I'm in Texas, and so he's always known that I've been a big Texas Chainsaw fan, and he's always been against me with it, saying Leprechaun is better and the movies are better, and so that's what it turned into.
I never said the movies were better. No, she's getting.
I hate to say that, but
she's getting carried away.
You're very, very wrong, sir. Very wrong. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a great movie.
Oh, I agree.
A great movie.
I agree.
And a game-changing movie.
Oh, historical.
To be honest, it was kind of the movie that snuck under the wire for me. It suddenly appeared in early 70s, I guess, and it was, where did this thing come from? It's a superb movie.
I never said April got a little carried away. I never said the movie was better. All I said was she annoyed me about it and wouldn't stop making fun of Leprechaun.
No, you said it was better.
That's for another day. But all right, so we got your side, Mr. Bradley. I appreciate that ridiculous question being answered.
You're very welcome, but it's a landslide for Leatherface. No question about it.
Okay. Fair enough. But Mr. Bradley, again, I can't. There's not enough words in my vocabulary to thank you for coming on and talking with us. April, I know you had some notes on the Doug's website and all that stuff.
Yes, I saw that people can actually buy photos. Is that correct, with signatures and things like that? 10 by 8 are available. You can order them. You can tell me what
what dedication you want on them, or no dedication at all. Give me your name and I'll sign it to you. And so 10 by 8, the book is available at the store. Spine chillers are available at the store. T-shirts are available. So, yeah, all at DougBradley.com. You're very welcome. Thank you, guys.
Have a good night.
Okay, bye-bye.
Doug Bradley. That was amazing. Guys, don't forget to go to slasherradio.com to check out all these interviews and more. Around this time that this interview was released, by the way, we had an interview with David Arquette that was, I think, the week of. This was a Halloween special. That's right. This is a bonus episode that we threw down for you guys. And the week of this release was a David Arquette interview, so you can check that out. John K. Sear, the Crypt Keeper himself, Greg Nicotero, Tony Todd. Our catalog is great. Go to slasherradio.com, check all that out. And also subscribe to us. It helps us a lot. Leave a review. And you can check me, Rob, and Kat out every week on this feed, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you find podcasts, that's where you'll find us. And don't forget to check out the Patreon, guys. We put out a lot of extra content. The Easter eggs every week are on there. Rob's Audio Network is on there, all the episodes for that. They're hilarious, and just a lot of extra stuff, commentary tracks, the whole 9 yards. Go check it out, patreon.com/slasher radio, and we will catch you guys next time. Good night from Slasher Radio.
All the best of Slasher Radio podcast.